Alright, today I want to go over installing the InfiniKey CPS2 mod board into various versions of CPS2 cartridges. There are 7 types of known CPS2 games out there. As far as hardware goes, there's 2 black all-in-one boards, and then there's 5 cartridge looking boards. And so I want to cover the installation of those. I want to start with the simplest, which is a revision 6 or 7 of the cartridge-based or either version of the all-in-one blackboard. They all use the same installation procedure, so I'll start with that because it's the easiest. The first thing you want to do is determine exactly which version of game program you have. So right here I have a Japanese pocket fighter game, and I'll pop this open so we can take a look at the labels. And we can see, you'll have to pardon my wonky camera setup here. I couldn't figure out a great way to display this, but I think we can get through it with some determination. So let's see, where are we? I want to look at this guy. Let me zoom up a little bit. Sorry, it's a very light print on the label, but this says PCFJ. So that's Pocket Fighter J for Japan. So we're going to look at our sheet here, see if we can find that. We got PCFJ. PCFJ. So this has on the chart the ROM label, the game select key, which correlates with these jumpers here on the board, and then this is the ROM name that you would find in MAME or in ROM ident. And I'll probably cover ROM ident in another video, but that can be helpful if you're missing labels or some other issues come up. But for the sake of brevity in this video, all these games are assumed good hardware-wise, except for possibly a dead battery. So we'll mark this one, and then what we'll do is I'll show that the game is working, and we'll go from there. This one has a good battery in it still, but we want to get rid of the battery because we don't ever want to take the chance of it dying or damaging itself from acid. Alright, so I know it's kind of hard to see from that other preview monitor, but there is some game action going, so it is alive. When I'm pulling these games off, I like to leave the bottom half of the case on here. It actually works as a good lever for prying things off, so I'll leave that there. And first action is to remove the battery. So I will try and get that in frame as best I can. And I got my soldering iron heated up, so I'm going to refresh the solder a little bit on here so that we have good heat transfer. Then I'm going to come under here with my fingers, and I'm going to be pulling down while I heat up that solder joint. Pull down. And this had a what do you call it, a keystone mod, where you had a removable battery without having to solder, but we're getting rid of that. I'm not going to take the time, but if you want to clean this up on your own, I recommend using some solder wick to clean up the old solder, and then follow that up with some cotton swabs with isopropyl alcohol, and that'll clean that up real nice so that next time anybody opens the case they're greeted with a nice clean area there. So up on top, if I can get this in frame, there's this connector up here, and we're actually going to access this from the bottom of the board. So this is CN9, as you can see, and we are going to throw down a InfiniKey. Get my soldering iron over here, and I like to start with pin 6, which is on my right over here. And the solder on these pins over time can tend to oxidize a little bit, so it's good to keep that in mind when you're soldering to them, that the solder may not immediately stick. You may have to be a little bit patient with that, and if you're using rosin core solder like I am, allow that rosin to do its work to clean the pins. So I'm focusing my heat on the pin and not on the pad of the InfiniKey. And once you get enough solder on there, the solder will just kind of creep up the pad on the InfiniKey. So I'm really just focused on making sure I've got a good solder on the pin that's on the CPS2 board. And get this one here. We'll clean up that first one. And so now the board is actually all soldered down, and now we have to address these jumpers here. This note right here says open for 93646B-5. We don't really care about the prefix as much as the suffix. So this is, for most people's purposes, this would be considered a Rev 5 board, and you can also see that printed. Well, this is, I'm sorry. Okay, this is a Rev 7 board. This note is referring to Rev 5. So, because it's not a Rev 5, we are going to solder that jumper in. Okay, now we need to put in that code that was on this sheet. So we go back to our PCFJ, and you can see that our code is 01100001. So we are just going to put that in solder. So we have 0. Oh, stupid. Alright, that's a 01. Clean that off. 01 10 00 01. Okay, so we got that, and now we're going to plug this guy in, and if everything worked right, we should see some game action, and came right up. If we had put that code in wrong on those game jumpers, it would be a blank screen, just like if your battery was dead. So that's that one. Now let's go to a Revision 4 board. This is a USA Marvel vs. Capcom. And power this up just to verify that it's dead. Alright, we have a solid colored screen, which indicates the battery's dead or some other hardware problem, but in our case I know that it's the battery. So pop this guy off. This is one of those original red Maxell batteries, which are notorious for destroying CPS2 games when it leaks acid everywhere. So we're going to get that guy out of there. And get this battery in here. Heat up one side, heat up the other side. Whoops. Yeah, there we go. That battery's gone. And this is Rev 4. You can see that there. Rev 4. And it's the same thing for Rev 3 as far as the installation goes. So in this game, this is, like I said, it's Marvel vs. Capcom USA. And so we're going to look at, where are we here? Marvel vs. Capcom U. Let me see U. So we'll put a little marker there so we don't forget. And this is, well, let's get the board installed before we put that code in. So we'll go over here to the end of CN2. CN2, sometimes on Rev 3 and 4 boards has this resistor installed. And Capcom was actually not consistent in installing those. I'm going to remove it here. I'll tell you why. In my testing, it didn't seem to make any difference whether it was present or not. The purpose of it was to be a pull-down resistor on the data signal for writing the encryption key back into the board. But data doesn't get clocked into the system unless clock is moving, and clock is already pulled down with another resistor. So it doesn't really matter if that data signal flops around. As long as clock is pulled down, there's no problems. So I'm not quite sure why Capcom sometimes installed that. Maybe somebody got scared and thought that was a weak point of the system. I don't know. But in my extensive testing, it does not make any difference. So I'm going to solder this first pin so we can start to get this board anchored down. So now that that's there, you can keep this solder melted and kind of tweak the board to whatever place you like. That looks pretty straight to me. Now I'm going to go to the other side of this connector. This is just the last 4 pins on the top of that CN2 connector. So get these in here, and that looks good to me. It's okay if they look kind of blobby, as long as you are sure that the pin got soldered well. So on the Rev 3 and 4 boards, we don't have access to that 6-pin header to get power, so we have to pull power from somewhere else. There's a little tag here that says ground, a little tag here that says +5. We are going to use those. I'm going to add some solder to this ground pin, and we're going to get a wire on there. If you need to, you don't be afraid to use tweezers. When you got big fingers like me, sometimes that really helps. So get this wire on there. So we're now grounded. Now we need 5 volts. There's a point right here at the bottom of this unpopulated diode pad. We're going to make sure that there's a nice little ball of solder on that. A lot of soldering is kind of like when you read the back of the instructions on super glue, some other glues. It says be sure to apply to both surfaces. The same is true for soldering, that you make sure that you pre-solder what you're going to solder to. Oh no, it looks like my ground wire popped off. So we'll get that guy back on. Give it a little tug. Oops. I think the problem is that I have some insulation. What is going on? Sorry guys, I'm making myself look like a scrub here. There we go. Okay, that is definitely soldered. So these wires, I have pre-tinned the ends so that they're that much easier to solder to. So that will help keep your headaches to a minimum. Okay, so give these guys a good yank. They're not going anywhere. So this solder jumper right here doesn't really matter so much on Rev 3 3 and 4 because we've attached power elsewhere, so I'm just going to leave that open even though it's not a revision 5. Right now we're going to put in our game selection jumpers, and this is, like I said, it's a Marvel vs. Capcom USA, so I'm going to put in that code right there. So we have a, let's see here, 0101. So we go 01 and 01, and then the rest are empty. So let's see if this guy comes alive. Make sure all 4 connectors are firmly seated. And here we go. Marvel vs. Capcom USA. Dun, dun, dun. There it is. Alright. So that is Rev 3 and 4. And then the last one, which hopefully my memory card or battery does not poop out on me on this last one, but we're going to do a revision 5 if resources permit. So this is a 19XX Japanese, and this one I had received from another collector, and this has Avalanche ROMs in it, which, if you don't know what those are, it's basically like Phoenix ROMs. So there's no battery, but you'll see that the game does come up. So this is a vertical game, so the text is up on this end. So it does come up. What we want to do is remove these chips and replace them with chips that are programmed with the original game code. And I pulled that just from some online resource. I'm not going to tell you where to buy or where to find MAME ROMs, but that's where I got it. So I'm going to pop these chips out and put in some that are already loaded up with the right game code. I'll swap the labels later, but for now they're just labeled according to the chip number. So this just gets us back to original game code, but when we put these back in, our board is dead. So we need to put an InfiniKey in here. So as I mentioned earlier, this is revision 5. So this guy has the that 6-pin header, just like Rev 6 and 7, but the power pin is different. So let's get this guy on here, and again, starting with pin 6, just refresh that solder. I apologize, my memory card just filled up as I was fearing, and we're back at it. So we have the first pin soldered here. We're going to go over here and follow these back over. This is the easy part. It's trying to put in those codes right. That's the mind bender. Alright, so this is Rev 5, so we're going to leave that jumper open. And another aspect of that is the reason that this jumper exists is because we don't want to have pin 1 connected to 5 volts on this board, because pin 1 on Rev 5 is not 5 volts. It goes to that battery backed circuit, and we don't want to power this off of that because there's no power anymore. So we're going to use that 5 volt tag again. We're going to solder this extra wire in here, and we're going to pull power off of this pin here, the plus on this capacitor. Let's see if I can do this without tweezers. Hey, alright. So now we have 5 volts connected. Ground is already connected here because of that header. And we need to put in our game code. So this was 19XXJ, and let's see, where's that? Oh yeah, up here, and it's just a 101 on the end. So we'll do that real quick. So we got 101, and put this guy in. Let's see if it works. Sure, we push all 4 connectors down, and here we go, 19XX Japan. So that is all 3 styles of installation. If there are issues along the way, perhaps I'll do another video on problematic things that can come up, like if there are some boards that probably the worst examples are the ones coming out of Brazil. They'll mix and match the case colors, they'll mix and match the ROMs. It's kind of an anything goes Wild West type scenario. And if the labels are either missing or don't make sense, those chips can be put into a chip programmer like this one. You can put that chip in, you can read it, and you can run that through a program called ROM-ident, and that'll tell you the ROM set in MAME. And then from there you can download the appropriate files to put into your program ROMs or program EPROMs. So perhaps I'll cover that on another video. But yeah, I'm excited to be putting this out there so people can run original game code without a battery. I think that's kind of the dream everybody's had, and thanks to the work of some really dedicated people, that decryption information is out there, and we don't have to bother with Phoenix ROMs or Avalanche ROMs or anything. We can just grab a board, pull the battery, put in an InfiniKey, and call it a day. So yeah, I'm excited. I will have further news on where you can buy those and whatever else seems to make sense as time goes on. And thanks for watching.